My name is Anthony Giannamore. I graduated from Purdue, Indianapolis with a degree in construction management in 2024. I work for Custom Living and I'm a project manager. Before I went to school, I was a carpenter. When I decided to go and enroll in a construction management degree program, I was able to get a job with Custom Living. I started as an assistant project manager, and I was able to carry that work experience all the way through my time at Purdue, Indianapolis. So what that allowed me to do was take what I was learning in school out in the field, which was a really cool experience, and then take what I was learning in the field actually back to the classroom. So with all those things together, I was really able to multiply and then kind of hone in what I was learning in both aspects to what I was learning and wanted to learn in my career. There's kind of two distinct fields in construction that I think about. There's the hard skills, which is understanding the means and methods, how to actually build something from the ground up, how to look at it and understand mechanically how it's all going to come together. But then there's a huge industry and schools of thought around the whole business of construction, understanding your contractual relationships, understanding things like your prime contract and your subcontracts, cost estimating, properties of materials, really fine-tuned kind of engineering mind understanding that I gained at school that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And all those things allowed me to kind of further develop my career. One thing I learned early on in construction, somebody told me construction is a team sport. And I think that coming out in the field, I understood that kind of inherently, but coming into school, we were often put in these situations where we had these collaborative projects that we were working on with other people on the team. And that helped me dial in understanding better how do I approach different people from different backgrounds with different proficiencies, communicate with them in a way that they're going to be receptive to, and then ultimately draw everyone towards this one conclusion that is the project that has successful outcomes. For Custom Living, this project is a huge milestone. This is our first time engaging with Baggy in the Homerama show. So this is the largest house I think we've ever built, or maybe the second largest, I'd have to check that. But it is a huge milestone in terms of what we're able to produce and who we're bringing in to produce it with us. I was a non-traditional student, came into school already being 22, so I had already had several years of experience in construction, and then before that in other fields. So I had a couple years of construction working out in the field before I started with Custom Living, and then once I started working with Custom Living, I was still working primarily in a field capacity. I was helping doing things like punch out, running schedules, bringing materials to site. And in that, I got all this exposure to what it was like on an operating job site. And then I was able to continue to develop that understanding into being able to run smaller projects and then eventually larger projects. Not only is technology important, and I do use it all the time in my career, but I've been able to use things that I learned in school and actually bring them back to my company and help develop these systems to further what I think is going on in industry that I learned about in school. In my job now, things like our truss systems and our floor systems, those are all modeled in BIM, and BIM is something that I gained familiarity with through my time at Purdue, and we're continuing to develop, trying to model these interactions between different mechanical and structural components so that we can anticipate better problems that we're going to have before we're running into them in the field. And there's a number of faculty that I interacted with all the time in school that had field experience and had come from some kind of background in industry, and then looking out past the campus, I mean, there's tower cranes all around downtown Indianapolis. There's no want for construction industry activity out there. So between the industry advisory board and the faculty at Purdue Indy, I was able to form a pretty robust understanding of what the general landscape of the industry was like in Indianapolis and beyond. There's a tremendous demand for construction professionals in all segments of the industry, and being in Indianapolis at the core of all industry in Indiana, that's where a lot of construction activity is going to be happening. That's where a lot of contractors are located in their main offices, and that's where a lot of these big developments that are being built are happening. Yeah, I feel a tremendous affinity for the school for what it was able to provide me in terms of not just an education, but for development, personal and professional. And I have really enjoyed continuing my involvement with the school through the program in order to help kind of find people that are like how I was starting out, where maybe they need a direction, they want to figure out what part of this awesome industry they want to get involved with, and they just want to come try it out and see if maybe custom residential is something that they'll be interested in, boutique commercial, or even remodeling. Through the program, you're exposed to all different kinds of construction, and that's to the point where even coming out of that program, coming into this residential sector of the industry that I'm in, I know some things about heavy civil construction, road construction, water retainage, stuff like that, that even guys that have been building houses for a very long time don't fully understand. There's things that I learned in the program, especially about water retainage, which is a huge part of residential development, that I'm able to discuss pretty conversantly with my counterparts in the field, and I think that I was able to gain a general understanding, at least, of a huge breadth of construction. Attention to detail is huge. Being able to talk to people is also really big, and I would say if you're first starting out, find a way to develop all different skills that are relevant to construction. I would recommend trying to find a way that you can go out there and have an internship where your bag's on for maybe part of the day or part of the week every week, get some practical field experience, and then while you're out there, think about how to talk to people, how to cooperate with people, how to get people to cooperate with you, and then how to really understand how all these things are coming together. Because as you develop your business understanding in the program, if you have that means and methods and interpersonal tradesperson understanding, you'll go a very far way in this industry. When I was in school, there was one capstone class. It was all the graduating seniors were in the same class, and everybody gets together, forms a project team, which is basically your GC for the project, and then you analyze and bid out and then ultimately pitch building some existing facility that's somewhere. I think they've always done it in the state of Indiana. When I did it, it was the night transport facility, which I want to say was in Plainfield. It was a very complicated build. There was a lot of different kinds of structural framing, a lot of different means and methods going into it. I think that they choose it to make it kind of difficult to estimate, but it really forced us to wrap our heads around these drawings. We had the opportunity to go see the place in person, which was cool, and I was able to actually talk to the superintendent that built the facility, which was also a great experience. And then we prepared for this pitch and we carry it out. And in that process, they ask a lot of questions, and the intention of those questions is kind of to stump you. But it's very typical in construction, because when you're dealing with stakeholders and clients and owners, they're people that have a lot of money involved in what you're managing, and they expect you to have intelligible answers to their questions. I would say do it. I would absolutely say do it. The access to the industry that you will have in Indianapolis is tremendous. It's a nationally accredited program, and you'll have your peers and you'll have a faculty that'll stand behind you and help you develop into a huge array of possible positions that you can get into with a construction management degree, which is not just field operations, but there's estimating, there's contract administration, specifying, all kinds of things that you can do with this degree. It's awesome. I think that actually seeing the fruits of your labor every day is a huge part of it for me. Being able to plan how we're going to build this and then actually carrying it through production is awesome. And then seeing whatever the vision was on the original design and whatever the owner of the project actually wanted to see in real life become realized from a rendering is really cool to see. There's been a couple of really cool houses that I've been involved in before I was a project manager that I was able to work on in my time in Purdue that was really cool to be involved with. And then before that, I was doing these really big remodels, a lot of them on historical homes in Meridian Kessler. I did a bunch up in Carmel as well. And it is fun to be able to drive around pretty much anywhere in central Indiana and be able to say on the weekends, like, I remember that house. I know those people, and I know what we did in there, and I know what it looks like now. And it's a good feeling. With residential, it's really cool because you're making an impact in somebody's life. You're building the home that they're going to come home to every day. You're making the space that they're going to occupy, and there's a certain level of craftsmanship and attention that goes into that. It is for somebody to live. Individual influence that you have in residential is cool too, because if you look at like an organizational chart for commercial, in a residential company, there's fewer people on the team. So like I'm the project manager and I'm the superintendent and I'm helping with the pre-construction, and it's just more hands-on involvement as opposed to being like superintendent in charge of concrete, rebar, or whatever on a hospital or something like that. I love it. Guys want to build bigger projects. I get to build big houses, so you get that element of workmanship and the element of size and scale, which is pretty sweet.